Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. And some big news with the Springboks confirming the list of unavailable players for this weekend, which is a combination of international players unavailable, as well as internationally based players, as well as several South African based players who apparently have also returned to their franchises. And actually, quite an interesting mix of players. And I think it'll be interesting to sort of find out exactly what the situation is, because we have some Japanese players available, but some players aren't. We have some South African players who aren't available, for example. Obviously, the vast majority of the squad are players who are based in South Africa, and they are available for this weekend. However, with it being outside the World Test window, there has to be agreements with teams to allow these players to play this match. And we never see, for example, English and French teams allowing that. And we haven't seen apparently some of the South African sides have also said that they want certain of their players back. So we assume we're going to see those players who have been released in our local sides. Alternatively, the Boks have decided they don't need them this weekend. So we haven't got an entire confirmation on exactly what the situation is. However, we have got a list of players, and it'll be very interesting to see, based on this list of players, who actually eventually makes the final 15, who makes the final 23, and kind of what we're going to get out of this Welsh game, which we do well to lose, given the fact that Wales will be out their internationally based players, for example, and a lot of their best players are playing outside of Wales. And it's a pretty depleted squad anyway. Before we get to the exact list, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, this is the list that has been published by SA Rugby of players who are unavailable. In the forwards, no Malcolm Marx, no Thomas du Toit, no Bowen Venter, no Lood de Jager, no Cheslin Kolbe, no Pieter-Steph du Toit. So no World Player of the Year in Malcolm Marx. No Pieter-Steph du Toit is obviously a big one. And then to our backs, no Grant Williams, no Handré Pollard, no Malcolm Marx, Jesse Kriel, Cheslin Kolbe, or Edwill van der Merwe. So the big ones there are, your Grant Williams, Handré Pollard, and Edwill van der Merwe, who are based in South Africa, but are still not available for this game. Apparently, they have all returned to provincial unions and clubs. So I don't know if that's, for example, the Bulls sitting on SOS and basically saying we need Handré Pollard back for this weekend, whether it's the Boks saying we don't need him to play against Wales, for example. My understanding is it's probably the format. That's why I think, Edwill van der Merwe is coming back, Grant Williams coming back, for example, because I think that those are probably players that Sharks have said we've got to have them this weekend. We'll obviously only know for sure once we see the sort of the Sharks seat size and the likes of that name. Bulls taking on Lions this weekend, and quite frustrating that if they have an Handré Pollard, for example, whilst the Lions are without a Morne van den Berg, without an Asenati and Klaver-Kanye, especially if like an Asenati Klaver-Kanye doesn't play on Saturday for the Boks. But it's an interesting list because it doesn't mention Jasper Wiese, for example, doesn't mention Franco Mostert, who are players based in Japan, but apparently are available. The big thing we're obviously going to see is a new front row, given the fact that that's literally starting front row from last weekend in Malcolm Marx, Thomas du Toit, Bowen Venter. This is why Bongi Manambi went and joined the squad. This is why they brought in Ntuthuko Xunu. So my guess is we'll see an Ntuthuko Xunu potentially even start or on the bench, obviously. Johan Grobbelaar probably to start, Bongi Manambi to come off the bench, or vice versa. And it'll be interesting to see if Wilco Louw does play this weekend, or if they go with Zachary Portham and Asenati and Klaver-Kanye off the bench and kind of just keep Wilco Louw as an option. I don't think you need to play Wilco Louw this weekend, for example. I think he's obviously had quite a big workload in the last year, so you potentially might be able to give him a rest. From a lock perspective, they don't mention Jean Klein being unavailable. I mean, my assumption that he is unavailable, but they haven't named him, so maybe there's an agreement with Munster. They don't necessarily need him for this weekend, unless he's just completely injured and not available at all, but we haven't been told such at this stage. So the lock's going to be, Eben Etzebeth, Ruan Nokia, for example, but we're not going to see a Lood. Lood was, suspended anyway. But we're not going to see an RKS Neyman off the bench. We might see a Franco Mostert, for example. Might we see him at 7? We're going to see Ben Jason Dixon at 7, for example. With Grant Williams having left, there are only 2 scrum-offs left in Morne van den Berg and Kobus Reinach. So, those will be our options. The worrying thing comes if there's any injuries. In the week, for example, and all of a sudden you have to parachute somebody in. No Handré Pollard, no Malcolm Marx means we only have one out-and-out fly half in the squad in the form of Sasha Famigama-Zulu, but you've got a Damian Willemse who can cover 10 if needs be. The problem is you've got the 2 players who are your 2 players to cover 10 and 15. You've got Cheslin Kolbe who covers 15. You've got Malcolm Marx who covers 15. Even Edwill van der Merwe could potentially cover 15. So given the fact that we've got Sasha, we've got Damien to cover both 10 and 15. It's going to be very interesting to see how we pick the squad. because you've probably got Curtly Arnsler who could potentially go back to the number 15 jersey if needs be, but it's left us pretty thin. It has left us very, very thin. To lose 12 players of what I think a 38-man squad by the end of it, means that we are down to about 26 odd players in the squad. And it's, we've had squads of 26, 27, for example, but not often. So it's going to be an interesting team selection. As I said, I think if you're being brutally honest, it's a game we don't actually need. I think that obviously in the beginning of the year, for example, we spoke about wanting to get extra games and being able to build experience. And from that regard, it'll be nice to give a Zachary Porth another go. It'll be nice to give a Ben Jason Dixon a go. But I think we're going to be playing against such a weak Welsh side anyway. I don't think we're going to get a massive amount out of this game. And you look at, for example, the selection issues that arise. I just think that all around it's basically a game we don't need. I think that the Japan match was far more valuable with that extra match than this has proven to be. I mean, and a 5-match tour is a very, very long tour. So it's interesting that we did opt for it. And again, I think obviously if this was a different team from a Wales, although we always do seem to play, for example, I think, well, to be fair, I suppose we played England before, just as well we're not playing in England with a depleted squad. But I think, it's frustrating to be able to play against a Welsh side which is not going to be at its best, and it's already not particularly good. So it's going to be a frustrating game, I feel. But hopefully it just gives an opportunity to try and blood a few players, maybe take another big step in terms of maybe Damien Willemse running at 10, for example, maybe Sasha running at 15 for a bit. Could be an option. Maybe we're going to start Curtly Arnsler at 15, see what he can do. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes. Andre Essayer, for example, maybe starts on the flank. These are some of the selection things we might see. We've got to really sort of weigh up our different options over here. But I think the main thing is it's not going to be a massive spectacle. We're not going to see an all-time classic test match. Because we just don't have two teams who are playing at high levels at the moment. In terms of the continuity of the Boks, for example, I think the Boks will be too much for Wales. Wales, hammered by New Zealand, were very spirited in the early stages, but lose players like a Louis Rees-Zammit, for example, who probably won't be available. And Max Llewellyn, for example, who won't be available. There'll be some key players in that Welsh squad who probably won't play. And I think there's a frustration over there in that, we want to be able to play against a Louis Rees-Zammit, who is scored a fantastic try over the weekend. And he's one of the few, world-class players that Wales do have. So, to not have him is a big blow. And you go look at the squad that Wales have released, and I think that there's only like one or two players that have more than about 30-odd caps. You've got Aaron Wainwright, who's still in there with 61 caps, but he's nursing an injury. You've got Gareth Thomas, who's got 43 caps. The next highest caps is Rio Dyer with 23 caps. But, no Thomas Williams, one of their best players. No Rees-Zammit, as mentioned. No Max Llewellyn. It's really, really frustrating not to have those sort of players. You don't have a Daf Jenkins. So it's not a good Welsh squad. It could be significantly better. And as a result, I think we're going to see a pretty one-sided affair. But it's always fun to play at the Millennium Stadium. So that's probably the only other thing. What do you think? Given these injuries, where are you with your team announcement or your team prediction for the Springboks? Go check out mypicks.app and go get that registered. And, we will update the squad for the players who are available based on this. And then you can try and pick a team, which will be announced on Thursday. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.